You're going to be selling your current home and buying a new home, and there's risks and challenges that come along the way. And so we're hoping to illuminate some of the options that you have in that process, and by the end of it, hopefully you can have a better understanding of some of the risks involved and how to mitigate them. So there's sort of three options when you're going through this process. You can time it all perfectly, which we'll get to at the end. You can sell first and then buy with a rental or some sort of temporary accommodations in the middle, or you can sell your home first, or sorry, buy your home first, your new home, and then have a bridge to meet the middle, meet the gap in the middle. So in the option where you sell first and then you buy, the two biggest risks that we see are one. It seems pretty obvious, but just make sure that the money's stored away somewhere safe so that you don't dig into it. And then two, the biggest one is have a plan for when you are going to re-enter the market. Quite commonly, we're just talking about a week or a month gap, but the odd time we'll have a client who decides that they're going to sort of stretch it out, and unfortunately, in some markets, they can find themselves in a position where they're not able to have the ability to re-enter the market. So those are the two big things there. Now, David, if you want to expand a bit on buying first and then bridging.
Yeah, absolutely. So, a lot of people have heard of what a bridge means, but really what we're talking about is temporary financing for the down payment. So, you've purchased a property, your closing date happens to be before the closing date of your sale. So, you won't have the money that you need from the sale of property for your down payment. So, a bridge just means to bridge that time gap, whether it's, a few days or a couple of weeks, sometimes longer. But really, the amount of the bridge is just the down payment itself. So on that case, it's really important. Number one, first and foremost, just plan ahead. So this is not necessarily a hard process and it's not really that expensive, but talk it out with your mortgage broker, your bank specialist, whoever you're working with that is handling your financing so that they can prepare. And the reason for that is that some lenders don't actually do bridges. So you might be with a particular bank that might be the right fit in many ways, but if their bridge policy is either too difficult, too expensive, or they don't do it, then we might need to make some changes. So it's not impossible to do a bridge with somebody else who's not your main bank or your main lender. But again, when we factor all the costs in, it might make sense to actually switch at that point. So certainly talk that out and know that not everyone does a bridge, but it's certainly available in a lot of places. The next thing is that before you can apply for a bridge, you need to have a firm sale agreement on the property you're selling and a firm purchase agreement on the property you're buying. So you can't do it necessarily right away if you still have some conditions outstanding or if you haven't sold your property yet. So give yourself enough time to do those things and know that it might take, usually around 30 days or so to close on a purchase. So, don't run it too tight where you might not have time to get everything done. That just adds a lot of stress. The cost of a bridge, honestly, is usually pretty minimal. So let's say that you're planning to bridge for, $100,000. You'll have a smaller setup fee that each lender will charge to create that bridge account. And then they charge you interest by the day. Sometimes you don't make payments on that. In fact, most of the time you don't make any payments on that. They just take it out of what the amount that you get at the end. So you plan for that. It's not a maximum. It's not a high cost. But as the bridge value goes up, sometimes you'll find there are legal costs. So if you have to bridge an amount, in a lot of cases over about $150,000, then the bank doing the bridge may want to register that legally just to protect themselves. So in that case, you may face some higher cost additional legal fees. But again, usually not a massive difference. So plan for what makes sense for you. And the other thing is that every bank, every lender might analyze or underwrite a bridge differently. Some, it has no effect whether or not you have extra income or whether or not your application would be able to cover the extra mortgage debt. With others, they want to just know how much equity you have to cover it in the event of something going wrong. But, ask that question. And if you think, hey, we stretched our mortgage approval, we don't know if we'll be able to get approved for more financing for a bridge, just know that it may not have anything to do with your mortgage application itself. And so it's probably an option for you. Again, the big picture on this one to wrap that up really is that Dylan, it's it's about communication. It's to say up front what you think you might be planning. Connect your realtor and your mortgage agent to make sure that everyone knows what the timing looks like, and just ask questions if you aren't sure. And that's the best way, I think, to set up a bridge for success. But Dylan, if we don't want a bridge and we don't want to rent, tell us about the third option, or the most common option that people look to.
Yeah, absolutely. So most often people time it all perfectly on the same day, and the biggest risk mitigation there, David just touched on, which is having a great team that works together cohesively, from the financing side, the legal side, and the realtor. But some of the challenges to keep in mind: make sure that you're available the day of closing. It if everything goes smoothly, it'll seem like nothing's really happening. So you don't need to proactively reach out to your lawyer. They'll reach out if there are any issues. But if something comes up, there's a signature missing, whatever the case may be, you don't want it to delay closing because they're waiting on you. The other thing is, closings can really happen at any time, and your purchase and your sale might not close at the same time. So try to be ready to be completely moved out of your current home at 9 a.m. Just in case there's an early close on your current home, and then the home that you're moving into, it could close in the evening, closer to 5 o'clock. That's the most common time that we see properties closed. In the odd case, it might not even close, and the lawyers might stretch it out to the next day. So try to have contingencies in terms of the storage of your items, where you're going to sleep, and who's going to be helping you in preparing for the worst case scenario.
Yeah,
Now,
exactly.
as far as the last bits there, David, can you sort of round out how the logistics
Yeah.
happen on closing day?
Yeah, yeah, of course. So, you normally by closing day, when you're going through the whole process, that's when pretty much everything is done. You've already had the meetings with your lawyer. You've already done all of the money movement. You've already put the down payment in. You've already dealt with the deposit. So, closing day, for the most part, is pretty uneventful, aside from if you're moving and you're getting out of a property. That's the work that has to get done. But from the money perspective, all that's done. It's really just a waiting game. So, like Dylan said, if you're out of your property early, that's great. But what's really happening behind the scenes is that the funds are flowing from your lender that gave you the mortgage to your lawyer, who has to then transfer them to the seller's lawyer, and so on. So it may feel like, why is this taking so long? But to Dylan's point, be prepared that these things can take into the late afternoon, and in most closings do happen at that time. So while the money stuff's all done from your perspective, let the lawyers and the lenders handle the last minute steps, and they'll make sure to contact you when they're ready. But with that said, yeah, as a recap, obviously people want most of the time to close on a purchase and a sale on the same day. There's benefits to that. You don't have to rent, you don't have to bridge, you don't have to store anything. But there are some upsides and downsides to having either flexibility in being able to move over a few days, or to not having to rush and do it all at one time. So, not every option makes sense for every person, but if you aren't sure what would make sense for you, or if you don't know what the next steps are, then, really we suggest just taking a look at the risks of each of these things and consider which would be hardest for you to accommodate in your situation. On top of that, if you want to learn more about the benefits of, buying first, that's like conducting the buying transaction first or the selling transaction first on a real estate deal, then check out this other video that we have where we dive into the strategy behind that. And finally, if you have questions about either the bridge process, how you should set up your plan to close, whether first or last on the sale, or anything else related to this, please, Dylan or I would be happy to help. Reach out to us anytime. And thanks again.